This week, we learned about diversity in the deaf community. According to the book, types of diversity in the deaf community include race, religion, ethnic background, economic background, varying levels of hearing, educational and communicative background, degree of parental acceptance and support, and degree of identification with other deaf people. These diversities are a result of the many different backgrounds from which deaf people come from. For example, some deaf people are born to hearing parents, while others are born to deaf parents. Some deaf people come from cities, while others live in rural areas. Some attend mainstream schools, while others attend deaf schools. And this diversity in the community leads to different identities that the deaf community has. And according to the lecture video, these identities are Big D deaf, Little D deaf, hard of hearing, deaf blind, deaf plus, bilingual, trilingual, elite, grassroots, and mainstreamed. I think that these identities come from a combination of their different diverse backgrounds that deaf people have. For example, someone that is Big D deaf may have been born to deaf parents and gone to deaf school, while someone that is Little D deaf may have been born to hearing parents and attended mainstream school and didn't learn about deaf culture until later in life. There's also two perspectives on diversity in the deaf community. The first is that the deaf community is accepting because they share this bond with ASL in the deaf experience. The other perspective is that the deaf people are more conservative because they have limited access to multiculturalism. I personally think that the first perspective is more accurate because that deaf people have, through the deaf experience, has experienced oppression and understand the feeling that oppression brings, and therefore that they are more accepting of other individuals. And then within the deaf community, there are multiple other diverse communities. For example, there is the LGBTQ plus deaf community, deaf Asian community, deaf Black community, and deaf Latino community. Each of these communities share the deaf experience, but they also share cultural, religious, and historical backgrounds as well. And I think that is why these subcommunities are so important, because it provides a community where they have a full understanding of each other through not only their deaf experience, but also their other cultural backgrounds. Because while the deaf community understands their deaf experience, they might not understand all the other aspects that come with, for example, being a Black person or part of the Asian community. While groups like Black community and the mainstream community might understand those aspects of their life, they might not understand the deaf experience.